interviewer told me that he bought his mother's house after she died, and that he felt really connected to her. He moved into her bedroom where she had died in bed, and just always felt like he could be, sit on the edge of the bed and kind of communicate with her. And that if he went to the graveyard or whatever, it was just like this cold, useless experience. And I said, yeah, that's because that's where that person lived, and that's where your connection was. Nobody sits around thinking about, when I die, I'm going to move into a casket in some graveyard, 40 miles away.
Welcome to The Reluctant Medium, where we cover the gamut of out there conversations. With an open mind and a curious heart, we want to talk about it all. From psychic phenomena and energy medicine to beings from other star systems and out-of-body experiences. You'll find a great balance between grounded science-backed topics and others that science hasn't quite caught up to yet. I'm your host, Dr. Maria Rothenberger, a psychotherapist by trade and a reluctant spirit baby communicator. And hey, even though I'm a medium, I'm not buying everything folks are selling. I just have a voracious appetite to know more about what I call the world of the weird. Join us on your favorite podcast platform or watch on YouTube at The Reluctant Medium. I'll see you there. The Reluctant Medium is part of the Ethereal Network. Here's another podcast you may want to check out.
Hey, you. Yes, you. Are you looking for a new podcast that appeals to your scientific curiosity, but is also a little bit spooky?
Show me how I died in a past life.
Well, look no further, because this cat is where it's at.
He had concerns about the ethics surrounding AI, feeling they had achieved consciousness.
Curious Cat Podcast examines the shadowy space where science and the supernatural collide. Listen every week with your host, Jennifer Holtz, as she and her guests explore what it means to be a soul in a meat suit.
We were healing karma together. They were all kind of predestined to resolve something.
Listen on all your favorite streaming apps and continue the conversation on Twitter at CuriousCatPodCA. Or find Jennifer and all her links at Jennifer L. Holtz, spelled HOTES.com.
Hey, welcome everyone to the Reluctant Medium podcast. I am stoked to be interviewing who I'm interviewing today. This is a phenomenal topic, one of the ones that I've been wanting to get to. And so I was so happy that he outreached me. I have Sheldon Norberg today, author of Healing Houses, which is, I'll be linking everything, obviously, in the show notes. I got to listen to a few sample chapters, which you can too, if you go to the website. It's phenomenal, phenomenal work. So welcome, Sheldon. Phenomenal Sheldon.
Thank you, Maria, my reluctant hostess. Thank you.
I'm a reluctant medium, not a reluctant hostess. I'd rather you all know all the things.
You're a thrilling hostess. Yeah, and I really want to dig in with you on why you're reluctant too. But I know it's a big challenge to come across to look over the parapet and come across the wall to accepting that this stuff is real.
That's right. Yes. We can talk afterwards about why, but you hit the nail on the head. And for me, because this is one of the things that I'm curious about for you, right? Because there is this melding or connection between science and spirit. I now believe it's on the same spectrum, but connecting the two. And you have a history of that too, like really delving into the scientific reasoning behind this, which I find so fascinating. But first, if you can say, what is it that you do? What is Healing Houses?
The best term that I've heard from one of my reviewers and a smart guy is a paranormal remediator. That's what he likes to call me. I work specifically in people's homes and also, businesses that have energetic charges from the previous inhabitants, be they living or dead. And what I interpret as the outpouring of emotional or energetic resonance while they were inhabiting or may still be living, and how that connects to the physical space and leaves charges that are uncomfortable or difficult or not aligned with the intention and purpose of the people who then live there. I did an interview yesterday, and the interviewer told me that he bought his mother's house after she died, and that he felt really connected to her. He moved into her bedroom where she had died in bed, and just always felt like he could be, sit on the edge of the bed and kind of communicate with her. And that if he went to the graveyard or whatever, it was just like this cold, useless experience. And I said, yeah, that's because that's where that person lived, and that's where your connection was. Nobody sits around thinking about, when I die, I'm going to move into a casket in some graveyard, 40 miles away.
No,
No,
not one.
I don't know. No one I've met. Maybe. I'll ask my dad. It's like, I'm donating my body to science, and I'm going to go be chopped up. I don't know, whatever.
Or donating organs. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right. And one of the things that you said I listened to some of the book chapters, as I said, you mentioned that the work that you do is very different from ghost hunting, where they are going to see if there are spirits there, but you are healing.
Well, yeah, there was no ghost hunting per se when I started doing this. And as much as people want that sense of proving through some sort of science that there is a measurable phenomenon that they can then give credence to, I came through my years in clairvoyant training and to specifically a fellow classmate's house that had an energetic imprint from the previous owner and events there that it was disturbing. And just because of who I am or my past or my skill set or whatever, I had the ability to help to really clear that energy. And it never occurred to me to want to take the time to invest in gadgetry to try to prove what I was already experiencing on a deep level or attempt to validate work that was very clearly going on and being validated every time I did it. And in the end, it's like, well, do you want somebody to confirm that there's something weird going on at your house? Or do you want somebody to fix it?
Enough said. Right there. How did you come to do this work in the first place?
But I went through some reformatting in my 20s and just really needed to figure out why I had had some of the experiences I had had, some very interesting consciousness experiences. I'd always been interested in paranormal and whatever as a kid, and there's not really a school for that. There's nowhere to channel that in America. And interestingly, just about the time I went to college, they shut down the paranormal studies programs at Duke and Sonoma State, where there had been foundation granted long-term programs that were developed. So that wasn't really a doorway. And I had had a number of transpersonal and in-dream experiences that left questions for me. And I went to have an astrology session, which was very enlightening. And my friend suggested, she had heard about the Academy of Intuition Medicine and suggested I go see this woman. And I signed up for her class and began the practice of restarted my meditation practice. I had started transcendental meditation when I was 10. So yeah, it was kind of an odd thing. My mom was studying to get her teaching certification. And she would take me with her to classes on weekends or whatever. And there was a sign on the wall somewhere, said, join the Maharishi and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, let's do that. So my mom and I started doing transcendental meditation when I was pretty young. And I think after a year, I figured I couldn't stop my heart So I gave it up because I was like, I want to get to some mastery level where I'm levitating. Where is the levitation? I need the levitation. I need to stop my pulse. I wanted to jump into level X. But the Academy was a very well-crafted program to help people understand the energy dynamics of their body and their field and their consciousness, and work in the map, the kind of Vedic map of aura and chakras and alignment with earth energy and personal energies, spirit energy, communication with other people in their energy bodies, and working with each other as a reader and energy worker to help them address their stuff. And the more you did it, the better you felt. The better you got, the more you recognized your injuries, the things that you've been carrying around forever, and where you unwound the onion skin of all of your life stuff in a very supportive and close class experience. And my teacher said that it's kind of weird that like every other year there's a class that's really tight and pushes out a bunch of people who become practitioners. And our class was that way. And so we met outside of class every week. We have class on Tuesdays and we'd meet on Thursdays and do readings. And there's a woman in our class who had this, when we meet outside of class, interestingly, she always seemed to be, people would read her and feel like she was being followed by some child spirit over her shoulder. And everyone would see this girl. It was like really weird. Which I realized later when I became a TA that, you can't bring stuff into class because there's people like cementing the layers around the classroom, and we're doing visualization stuff to keep it a clean space for everybody. So Sue came one night and asked if people would meet at her house and look at her house, because she felt like her house had this weird charge to it, and there had been a lot of things that had happened there. And everybody's like, oh, cool, haunted house, let's go. And so I showed up there the next week and nobody else came. And there was like usually 6-8 people every week. It's like, oh, just me. Interesting. So we began going through this history of the house. And the history of this house was the first house built on Mount Tamalpais in Mill Valley for the daughter of the Millers, who this whole town was built around. And they gave their daughter this house as a wedding present. And it was it was a pretty old and fantastic house. Not like what's built there today, but it was something. And she lived there probably 60 years or something before she died. And after that, it fallen into a bit of disrepair and was rented out to some weird people. And somebody was murdered there. The 70s happened and stuff was going on. And so we wandered through the house, and I would sit in these different rooms and try to feel what I was feeling going on and try to discharge this energy, which I was good at. And there was a particular point that stuck with me, which was that Sue had, when she moved in, the first Christmas she spent there, arranged the living room all the way she wanted it. And she's very design conscious, and said that when she was done, it just felt wrong. Like she didn't like it. She liked the way it was, but it just didn't feel correct. And she moved everything all around to the way that it just felt natural. Even though she didn't like it, it just felt right. She left it that way. And after Christmas, she gets a knock at the door, and it's another little old lady who's the younger sister of the woman who had owned her house, who had a house up the street and around the corner. And this woman's like, oh my goodness, you've set the house up exactly the way my sister did forever. And she came over with a photo album and showed her these pictures, 1953, 64. And it's like, well, that's weird. And that began to impress upon me my kind of contract concept that people set an energetic groove in a house, and that the people who move in afterward feel more comfortable accepting the set contract that's with a house than doing what they would naturally do. It's just that's the way it feels. And when you move into a house where some unpleasant things have happened, and that's the contract with the house, or that the person was depressed for a long time or had some long-term illness or whatever, your energy is more comfortable. It's easier for you to sink into what is an unhealthy state for you than to understand what you need to do or to take on a kind of practice that I do to address changing your house to be more livable for you.
Okay, that makes sense. I love that the younger sister came in and said you set it up exactly as that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Just wow. Because right, even though it wasn't comfortable as herself, it was more comfortable in that space. Okay. And you have a flow chart around because you and I talked before I hit record about being nerdy. And I love this, like really showing how energy affects a space, and it's all kinds of things, right? So when we think of negative energies or lower vibration energies or energies that don't feel right, there's a lot of emotion in there, or something that's like murder or something that's really intense. But you have lots of things, financial, financial loss, bankruptcy, physical,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, can you
wildlife, even.
I mean, there's a lot of challenging years here where the economy got tanked and everybody's losing their home. I mean, can you imagine what those last 6 months feel before you have to abandon your house, when you abandon whatever has happened and now you're like leaving your family, whatever? Or I do have the other chart, which discusses a family home. And in that, you have a house that already has a series of relationships that trigger you personally. And you walk into a new home or a strange home, and there's whatever you're trying to feel your way around. You walk into your home, and then, oh, there's the death of your own parents. There's your brother that you are fought with your entire life, or that still very charged financial relationship about who inherited the house, who bought out who, or what's the split. So the financial aspect of living is not one that we can separate from where we are on the spirit plane.
You're right. And things that I didn't even think about. The builder, the developer of the home. I'm like, what? Well, of course they have energy. Of course they do. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And what if there's a
I can
construction
tell you,
worker who gets injured or
that map is 20 years of my practice of going into houses and like going, what? Oh, the guy who developed this entire district of this town, of this, subsection of this town, snuck a deal through with the county not to have any observance of whether there was Indian remains, and dug up stuff and buried human remains or ditched them. And now everyone who's lived in his house has suffered cancer and death. Like, what's cooking over here? And what were the objectives and the transgressions? When you start to sit on a piece of land, you're looking at, okay, we're inhabiting Ohlone land, we're inhabiting Paiute land, we're inhabiting other people's sense of place. I went back east and I wound up working in this house that was built on a house that was built on what was their original basement, which was a brick sub-ground, like built into the ground home that had been lit on fire in the Battle of whatever this town was in Connecticut. It's like a known Revolutionary War battle where this whole town was assaulted by the British and everything was burnt down. And then I'm in this brick basement that still the walls are burned. That holds
Wow.
that holds a charge. And the people building over that are, we'll cover up all these dead people and we'll, think about how that's going to affect you or just what that feel holds.
And so I'm just a comment here because I'm coming back to an experience that I had that I'm just now making a connection that every year back east in upstate New York, we would go to a family member's cabin in the woods and
Cabin in the woods.
the cabin in the woods. It was beautiful by a river. It was gorgeous. But our dog would be so anxious and have like TMI, but like diarrhea. He would just be so upset.
Mm.
And now I'm making this connection because I know some family history and I'm like, oh, he felt it.
Your animals are working on a different wavelength, and your children are working on a much broader spectrum because they haven't been stuffed down into the mold of what is allowable to think and communicate yet. So I'm very, and it was a stumble in for me too. I worked on somebody's house, interesting job, and there was something terrible about the grounding of this house, like it was stilted or something. It just felt like it was not grounded at all. And I did a lot of adjustment to reset it, and I felt like I had to turn the whole thing sideways or something. I forget what it was, but it felt great when I was done, and they were very happy. The next day later, they called me and said, "Our cat won't leave this room downstairs. It can't figure out how to get out of the room, and it's like crapping in the corner, and it's acting weird." And I was like, "Oh, you didn't tell me you had a cat. Why didn't you think about the cat? The cat's looking at the model of the house the way it was. Now that room is over here, according to this way I turned things, and it can't find the door." I was like,
Holy shit.
I'll talk
That's
to
a
your cat.
thing?
Crazy. It was just crazy. And I like went, I fucking did this thing and found the door for the cat. I was like, cat, door's over here. Cat was fine. So I
Oh my God.
pay particular attention to people's animals. It's like if I send you my form, it's like, what animals do you live with? What are they? What's their names? It's all about everybody. If you study feng shui, traditionally, feng shui is designed and all of the adjustments that you make are typically attuned to the man of the house, and well, unless you're working for a woman, everybody's got I spent a lot of time studying Chinese medicine and Taoism and feng shui, and everybody has a particular calendrical tuning. Your animal is actually a 10 symbolic or a chart is what you are elementally. And so you align the feng shui to whoever the master chart is. But everybody else has their chart. And so if you position somebody, it's a couple of reasons I stopped doing feng shui, because became such a pop science. And if you don't understand that there's this really serious level of Chinese science behind it, it also very much relates medicinally to your bodily health, then you put somebody in a really wrong position. That person should not be in the West room, and you may want to give up some of what the master chart gains by being here because somebody else is going to be not in a good position.
Do you incorporate that work into healing houses?
No, I quit because it's so complex that nobody wants to hear.
Yeah, it
In
seems like a
real,
lot.
yeah, in real feng shui, it's like a lot of chart analysis, and it's now in feng shui, it's like, oh, it's a new year. You should be exiting through the kitchen door now. For the next year, I want you to go out through the kitchen. Or you're out of your mind. Yeah, it's crazy. And as I got more and more into feng shui and read more and more like esoteric texts, and gets far said, oh, if you have a ghost in your house, call a priest. If you have this in your house, call a priest. I'm like, well, I'm already doing this level of work that they're saying is over here. Why am I? Because it was a big pop thing and everybody's all feng shui, feng shui. I was like, well, I should be doing this. But again, it's like, I don't want to be a ghost hunter. I'm not, I don't want to be your interior designer. Um, I would prefer to spend hours a day meditating and be prepared to do what I do.
That makes
Because
sense.
in the jobs that really, really call for me to do what I do, you want to have me working.
Yeah. Right. You spend hours on folks' places to learn about the energy there.
Yeah, I have a practice. I have my chart and carrying around forever. All the things that I have to do that, as I said, I stumbled into this. It's like, oh, have I addressed the animal question? Have I addressed the neighbor question? The neighbors, like, why would the neighbor have any influence over your house? Well, before you bought your house, and this is what really turned my head, before my friend bought that house where the old lady had lived, the woman who owned it before her was really tight with her neighbor. That neighbor spent a lot of time in the house. Well, the neighbor really wanted to buy that house, and my friend Sue bought it. And so the neighbor was so miffed, she went on this multi-year construction project where everyone in the street, everyone down the block hated her because the street was always blocked and there was always a problem. There was always construction going on there. And when my friend went to sell her house, it wouldn't sell. It was sitting on the market for 6 months. Couldn't sell the house. And I stumbled across that and called her up and went over there. And I was like, well, I can't believe I cleared out the old lady and I cleared out the dead people. And I used to work with the trees and sat down and meditate. And I'm looking at the house. I'm like, what is with your neighbor? And she's like, oh, I hate that woman, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, she hates you too. And before you ever moved in here, she spent so much time in your kitchen, in your living room, and it feels like she's got her own doorway into your house. And she's completely interfering with the flow of your home energy. And I booted her out, locked her out, fixed the gate, and house sold 3 days later on the first day she showed it.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I've found in other houses that the person who lived there before had a fight with this person who lived 2 doors down, or their kids used to duke it out or whatever. And the house is used to, in the house contract, the house has this attitude that those people over there suck. And they may be dead, and these people may be dead, and it's 25 years later. But you move into the house and you look down at that yellow house, you're like, oh, those people suck. And because it just feels easier to think the thoughts that are already there for you than to create your own awareness.
Yeah. How about this is a quick little thing before I get into my next question. Oh, how about you've already lived in a house and then new neighbors move in next door?
Can they bug you?
Uh-huh.
Well, how was your relationship with your previous neighbor?
Good.
Good. Yeah, well, that might just be a personal thing.
Okay, good. So
Well, the world
they
has
don't
its
leave.
turns as well. If you have a positive engagement with whoever those people are, then, if you are historically were in good terms then I wouldn't sort of chalk it up to anything to do with the house.
Okay. That makes sense then. Thank you. Okay, you've been doing this work decades now, 25 years, yeah? That's what I read.
Yeah.
Okay. I have been asked as a medium numerous times about really dark energies, inhuman, like not human energies. And I don't connect with anything like that, though I believe they exist.
Reluctantly.
That's not reluctant. I'm really happy that I don't connect with them,
Mhm,
but I know
mhm.
I believe they exist. I'm curious about your experience with that.
Well, this is where I get to be a ornery psychic, because in all of my work, in my school, we talked about entities, and I know a lot of people want to talk to angels, people want to talk to dead people want to think there's etheric beings or this or that. And I have always been demanding of validation of what I am hearing and what I'm perceiving. And I do not like anybody to be telling me a story that I don't have a physical or any kind of provable interface with, verifiable, even if it's just the agreement of another person. It's one of the reasons I don't like to do readings for people, even though I'm not bad. I'm much more into hypnotherapy because I want people to open their own door and tell me their own story, because it's so easy to imprint people with the, oh, your past slave lives, whatever, your great whatever. Everybody wants to believe the whatever. And I don't want to believe anything that I haven't got a very solid sense of. And what's happened for me in working on houses is that I've come to the conclusion that everything, just about everything that has occurred in my work, is based on the energetic influence of human beings. That it's all people and their intense emotional and vibratory energy that creates both the remnant held energy in a place and the sort of projection of maybe some etheric body after they've passed for a period of time. That and nature, along with geography or the geography of land. So there's places that, because of the place that they were built or the environment in which they were built, don't feel right or have a kind of odd skew to them. And that also includes time. Um, and there's places that I've had a number of houses that are assaulted by animals, birds, or I had a house that I had to clear a nest of black widows from, rats, things like that. But in each of those cases, the animals were being signaled by something that had transpired in the house.
Okay. So any lower vibration energy or something you're saying is created still by human energy and environmental stuff.
Pretty much.
And your work is the same? You clear it the same way?
I have had to invent tools on the fly. I mean, you stumble into them. I walk into places. Otherwise, I tell people, that's my famous quote, because people call me very weird, like weird situations. And I'm like, well, um, I know what I can do, but I don't know what I can't do. So I'll take a shot at it and we'll see what it is. And usually in the course of going about what I'm doing, I will find something that kind of surprises me and possibly the person who's living there, and have to go, well, do you notice this? Does this happen? And they're like, oh, well, yeah, that does happen. I'm like, oh, okay, well, there's something to that I have to then follow that trail. And then I find myself sometimes needing to recalibrate, invent some kind of tool, have a different kind of engagement. I've graduating from being a young guy who's just like, I'm going to burn this imprint out, to, oh, I'm having a conversation with someone who was in pain about letting go of their fear and resolving this with compassion instead of duking it out.
Okay. I love that spin on things because it kind of reminds me actually of a ghost hunting show that I really like because they're so not drama. These particular group of people, and they say these are just souls without bodies. Talk to them. The compassion piece.
I pitched a couple networks. I had a really good producer pitching me to do a show, but I wouldn't do any of the things they wanted me to do. I was like, nah, that's, no 3 a.m. scared, shaky cam running around. I'm a guy who just sits and meditates, and then my clients go, what the hell did you do? It's a different kind of feel.
It's lots of compassion and love in there. Yeah. Are you able to share any examples of homes you've healed?
Yeah, I have a whole book.
Okay.
You can read my book.
Any today that come to mind?
It was really interesting. It's one of the houses, the one that comes to mind at the moment. A woman called me, and this was a very complicated job. It's like, well, I have a chapter about ethics, and in my book, a couple things that when you're doing a healing on a person, you ask their permission to engage with them on an energy level and to be able to see what you're looking at. You can't see anything about a person who doesn't want to show you anything. And in the same way, it's not ethically responsible to try to manipulate energy or contracts between people that are not giving their permission. So I had a woman who called me and told me that she had met a guy and they'd been dating and for some time and decided to get married. He was a widower and he had 2 kids. And she was independent and had her own place. They agreed that when they got married, that he would sell his house and they would get a new house and move in together. But after they got married, he dragged his feet, whatever, and she moved into his house and moved into the same bedroom where his wife had died of cancer. And every night when she'd sleep in that bed, she would dream that his wife was trying to strangle her or smother her with a pillow. And she would wake up and it would be like, whoa. And after not too long of this happening every night, she moved back to she had a loft studio, she was an artist, and she was trying to manage getting there at 6 a.m. to take care of the kids and do the kid thing and do the family thing and blah, 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 and not sleep in that bed. And that was really beating her up. And there was a lot of things about being there that were challenging for her. And as it turned out, the woman who color X in my book, had known that she had cancer for 3 years. She had the cancer diagnosis, and she got a 6-month to live diagnosis. She was probably pushing toward the end when she finally told her kids, with probably like 2 weeks to live. Even though she had all that prep time, she just could not face that, could not bear that. And she loved her kids. She loved her kids. And she did not want anybody in, taking her place. And it was really sad. And it was really, of any place that I've ever felt that there was a spirit that held its intention and manifested as if it were existing on this plane, that house was it. Because she would appear on the dream plane and try to kill this woman. And she said that, like, when she said she first year she did Christmas, and she was sitting at the head of the table, and she felt like she was being drilled right through the head. And she, like, in the little library, when she'd read to the kids, she'd feel like she was just gonna faint or whatever, because all of these things that X had done, that all these places in the house, she was super invested in being connected to her kids. She just was relentless. And so I think it's one of the first jobs that really pushed me into being more compassionate about resolving this situation, and realizing that as much as I had to escort her out and make these boundaries and change the dynamic of the space for my client to be able to be functional there and to support this woman's children, who were going to be abandoned if she maintained that kind of presence, I couldn't break her connection to her children. That would be an unethical thing. Like, kids are going to have to, she's going to have to be able to have, or the kids are going to have to be able to have, on this spirit level, some conception of their mother still existing in the energy plane. And I don't want to disturb that.
Of course not.
Yeah, that was a really sad and sort of beautiful experience. Well, yeah, I haven't talked to that woman in a long time. It's like, oh,
Well, how was that resolved? If you couldn't disconnect the mom from her kids, how was that resolved?
Oh, she's no longer in the house.
Okay.
She's no longer in the room. She's no longer in any of the rest of the house or influencing any of that space. And it just, it ended. Dreams ended. The feel ended. That's gone.
Nice. But she'll forever be connected to her kids.
Or that's probably gone by now. At a certain point, they crest out of that need, and for that to be a barrier for them to feel like their stepmother is unrelatable is not beneficial for them. I didn't want to leave that kind of contract in place either.
True. Yeah.
So there's ethical complications that you go into. It's like, a lot of times I get called by women who want me to work on a house while their husband is not around, because sometimes their husband knows and is forbidden some weirdo from coming, or he doesn't know and they don't want him to know because they know he won't, because he's going to freak out. And I have to sneak around a bit, which is always fun. But those jobs always work out fine, and it's never that kind of complex issue.
Yeah. I've had that too, where I've seen people all over the world online, right? And so it's 2:00 in the morning. They're like, my husband he's asleep. He doesn't know I'm doing this. I'm like, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay. So if folks are met with that discomfort that you're talking about, I know that there's a soul in my home, but I'm not uncomfortable. But if somebody is uncomfortable, before they call you, what are some things that they can do?
Well, I think basically the first thing is accept and chat. Do a ritual. I have a kind of list of sort of basic practices in the back of my book, but to accept that there's something that you feel is there, and if it's bugging you, to ask it to resolve whatever it needs it to resolve, and to ascend or clear out of your space. I I've worked in some places where people try doing things and they get worse. If there's something really intense there, they don't cotton to being annoyed, and you have to really have a good practice to engage on that level. But I think a lot of times the thing that's really struck me looking at Indian culture, Vedic culture, and the whole system of cleansings, pujas that are performed, moving a house, you have a ritual. You design, or you just simply go about having a ritual where you clear and claim the space for yourself. You do what you would do to, if you're candle burning or incense burning or flower casting or dancing and playing music, you do a ritual, and then you set your intention and your focus for how you want your life to be in the place, how you want the place to feel, and how you want it to be connected to your world.
Okay, I love what you just said there, because I was wondering about if somebody has this, okay, I have this task before me. I'm going to create this ritual to ask this entity to leave. When I've talked with people, there's a lot of fear involved in that. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be doing this work. But what you're describing is, you invite in a ritual that feels good to you. You dance, you flower cast, so there's no fear. It just feels like joy.
Yeah. And, and we get called to work very infrequently. I think that there's probably easily 10 times as much work as I get called to, just laying right on the surface that people can't grok. But I do feel, and I recommend that everybody do this kind of practice when they move, or even with some regularity. It's just, you just feel better in your home when you do things to claim it. And some people do that quietly. Some people's homes are altars in themselves, full of plants or full of flowers or full of instruments or whatever art, whatever they do that creates that feeling of what they want it to be. And you ring the gong and remind yourself that this is your place.
Yeah, I did that recently when we had visitors, and I love them. But I wanted to clear my space of their energy. And so I'm like I burned rosemary, and I'm like, smoking everything. And my husband walks down the stairs and he's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What? You have to ask still?" Like, really? I do this, man.
Yeah, man. No,
So it's not necessarily even negative energy. It's just energy that's not yours.
I had on my apartment for many years when I made a sign. So I was doing clients there, and I need to do it again. A lifetime ago, I had a little sign that I made that I put on the door as we were walking out. It says, "When you leave, take yourself with you," because there's this consciousness of yourself and your energy. And a lot of times, wow, that's a great time up there. I was doing this thing, and you're thinking about what you're doing there until you're driving down the street, and you're not aware that there's a chunk of your person that's now out of focus and refractory to where it was.
I never even thought of that. Yeah. My family member who was here, he definitely was thinking about us after they left, because he sent us a gift that went along with an anomaly in our house. It's a long story,
Yeah.
but I was like, that makes sense. He was still here. Like, part of him was still here. And I was prompted, I need to do some clearing.
Yeah, that really dawned on me when I worked on this house, really super intense, weird job. And toward the end of the day, I was working there, I was finishing up, and I got into this conversation with my client and her fiance, and we started blah, blah, blahing, and we decided to go out to dinner, and we wandered off, went to dinner, and got done. I had to go catch my flight and went home, called back a few days later. And I'm like, oh, so how's it going? And I'm like, oh, well, the smoking man is gone. Doesn't feel like I woke up. I didn't wake up at 3 a.m. It's not a guy smoking cigarettes in my living room anymore. It was amazing. But I feel like you're still here. I was like, what? Oh, yeah, because I did not do my closing ritual. It's like anytime, I don't know if you do pagan stuff, but you open the circle and you close the circle. You don't walk away from the circle and leave things laying about. So I was like, oh my God, because at that time and in that particular instance, I had to get super gnarly to get this job done. And I had to infuse this apartment as really intently. And so it felt like me. So it felt like I was still there days later. And so I was like, oh, sorry. And no, yeah, and that's done.
Things you don't think about. I mean, I don't think about that. Wow.
Well, it's so easy not to think about things.
Yeah.
And like, why would you have to? Should be a phone app. Things I should have thought about. It's like, hey, remind me to do that. But that's another thing is you're not used to taking a meditative practice out into a specifically challenging atmosphere and then sticking to it all the way through without being disturbed. And, it's very weird. I show up at people's houses and they're like, oh, I called the weird guy. Talking about this, there's only one thing that makes you more insane than thinking that there's paranormal phenomena in your house. And that is that you called some weird dude that you found on the internet to fix it. You are verifiable now. So I show up and I do my kind of interview and engagement, and then I sit around your house. So it's a little weird for people. I try not to be overly intimidating, and it's always friendly. We always get along, so it always works out great. But it's got to be a weird thing. And when I have to like really get down and focus, I have a period of time. Sometimes critical timing to get what I'm doing done and get out. So I do have to pay attention and not fall into being social. And I am very social and get my work done and clean up my tools and
Close the circle.
Yeah.
Well, I would feel like I've found my people if I invited you over. I love the world of weird. It's so great.
Yeah. I have, I do love hanging out with my clients once I'm done, but I'd love to come back or I establish friendships with my clients and everybody knows what I'm up to. But in that moment, in that point when you have a lot, and as I said, well, I didn't say. So it took me a long time to figure out what I'm doing in terms of a process level. I've got level one, I've got to do this layer, I've got to do this layer, I've got to do this layer. And when I started, when I walked into the first house, I'm like, well, what am I doing? Is this map like a body map? Is there an aura or is there chakras to this house? What am I looking at in this house? And so I got into this kind of critical sense of how I'm going to diagram a house. And what are the things that I need to address? And what order do they come in order to, what they say, paint up and clean down, I think? Or is it, no, it's paint down and clean up. See, I'm terrible. So you don't leave a mess, you don't leave streaks. So there's a systematic order to what I do. And, and I'll be meditating along. And at a certain point, I'll get to a place where I've been meditating for long enough that I can be at a 0 point myself, and I can be conscious of the entire house. So I'm aware and I can feel the entire house, the entire property, the entire ground. And that's my bigger practice when I'm not working is how big can I make my field? How deeply connected can I make my field? How can I go to big nature, go to Yosemite? Can I pull in this entire waterfall? Can I pull in this giant boulder or whatever so that I have these attunements? I go to the redwood forest and I pull in the biggest tree in the world to be an attunement that I can then bring that sense of what the vibration of this is, which is what I need to settle this house. And or just to restore it, or what I want to, I'm rebuilding the flow, just to say, this is, I want this house to feel. And I, ask my clients, you want your house to feel like you're in the desert? You want your house to feel like you're by the ocean? You want your house to feel like, where would you really like to be feeling? But I have to get to a place where I am capable of feeling the entire house on a vibrational level and notice if there's anything that is not flowing or is resistant or is still holding a problem thing. And I need to go up and sit in this closet. Did you know that something happened in this closet? And they're like, oh yeah, I don't use that closet because it feels weird. Like, oh yeah, okay, thanks for telling me. Great. I'll be in your closet for 15 minutes. Yeah. I'll be back.
Now, did I misread somewhere that you do this work virtually too, or from a distance, or no? You always physically go?
I vastly prefer to physically go. In the last few years, with the COVID thing, I was like, all right, I'll do remote just because it's smart. They can afford to fly me around and there and wherever, and they've got their situation. I found that when I did remote jobs in the past, that I have this thing like, I don't come back. I'm going to get this job done in one sit. Even if it's building and I know I'm going to be there overnight or the weekend or something, but usually I'm there for 4 or 5, 6 hours and I will get it done. But in a remote job, you don't have the feeling of the land. It's very difficult. You can say, all right, I'm thinking about what this land feels like over there, but you can't really feel like what the grounding is of this place. And if you know anything about geomagnetism or like how a compass works and the azimuth, you have, depending on where you are, you have to adjust your compass because physically the magnetic wavelength of the Earth changes based on the range you're in or the geography. And so different places, it's like, I'm working on a place in the desert, I'm working on a place in the mountains. I'm on a place by the ocean, working on a place by a river. Those all have distinct different feels, and the inability to actually be in the place is a bit of a challenge for me. So I have worked on houses remotely that I sort of overhealed, and that made me a little concerned. But
Interesting.
I'm getting better. I'm getting better at tuning down a little bit. So if I'm on and not being afraid to have to come back and do a little follow-up, especially if it's remote. I mean, I'm always following up remotely. If I go to your house, no matter where it is, and I know what the imprint is, and that's logged, when I call you up and there's a problem, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'll just meditate. I'll put myself back into vision of your house, and I'll fix it. But if I can't get in, if I'm 1,000 miles away and I have to clean it, my usual tendency is to and get a little intense for my clients. So I'm backing that down to a more gentle proposition. I want the work to stick. I want to make sure it gets done, but I don't want to drive all your pets out or make your hair stand on end or cause a tornado or...
Yeah, let's not.
Yeah, I have had I've had some strange occurrences happen when I'm doing distance work that I have ratcheted down to a ratcheting down to a
Yeah.
calm practice.
The only way to know, though, is to do it, right? And to realize, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's a
But,
thing.
it's easier for me to visualize doing something with a lot of intensity as working. It's really hard to get used to the idea that subtlety works. Maybe
Mhm.
not for you. For me, as a dude, it's
You're
like
right.
life's fast, and it's like I'm coming at this hard. And then you're like, oh no, but this judo works. Oh no, but this aikido works. And now the subtlety works, and that's really all you need. And so I'm just cementing that into my
Yeah.
my distance work practice.
There's
It's
something
very
about distance, though, too. You think, oh, I'm not physically there. I have to tune it. I have to really tune it up. But maybe you don't. Yeah.
no. And it's really, you find, if you're working with people, the distance is so much easier. I think the Zoom thing has been a great improvement, but just being on the phone, the thing that's really, it's like the definition is that when you're working on somebody, they spend half, and you're in the same room, they spend half the session looking at you, trying to figure out what the hell you're doing and how you're doing it. Whereas if they're just sitting at home with their eyes closed on a headset, you're in the tunnel doing the thing. And you don't have that, and they can be aligned with themselves much more quickly and easily.
Interesting. You're finding some things out. I
Yeah.
find the same thing through my work. I haven't done any spirit baby mediumship in person yet, but I'm curious to know how that's going to be. So I'm the opposite. I do everything virtually, and and I'm curious to see how the energy changes when I'm physically with a person. We'll see someday.
Well, it could throw you off. Like, why is this
Yeah.
person looking at me? Why are they? What do they want from me?
Right. Right. Why are you in my brain? All right. Thank you so much, Sheldon. What's the best place for folks to find you?
Healing Houses. There's a drop down. You can get my hard copy book. You can listen to a bunch of my audio book and download my audio book if you like that. There's lots of description and information about what I do and how I do it, my other kind of direct personal work practices and weird things I do.
Yes. We like the weird. Most folks listening here love the weird. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Surgical setups. It's always an interesting thing.
Oh, you've piqued some interest there.
It's another infrequent task that I take very seriously. But I've had very good results. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we definitely have to check. It reminds me of Wayne Dyer having a energetic surgery before he passed away. Yeah. Someone, I can't remember the gentleman's name, somewhere in South America. Anyway, yeah, that's amazing, amazing stuff. So, all right. Well, there's a lot more about you then, huh? Today we're just talking about healing houses, but many layers.
Oh, yes. The onion skin theory.
Yes. Or a parfait.
Oh, lovely. Yum.
Thank you so much, Sheldon. Appreciate you.
Real pleasure, Mark. Thank you.
Thanks for joining the Reluctant Medium podcast today. I hope you found some useful information, or maybe just a few laughs, or maybe you feel deeply seen. That's my hope. If you'd like to connect with me in any way, you can email me at maria@thereluctantmedium.us. Find me on all kinds of social networks. And if you'd like to connect with others in a free environment, along with myself, consider downloading the Mighty Networks app and searching for the Miracles Happen community. Would love to see you there. Until next time, my friend, may you be well.